right. Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you, everyone who's tuned in so far, and to BoxCon, the BoxCon family, for allowing us to have this conversation and giving that space to us. Also, thank you to everyone that's been listening so far today, and of course, our lovely panelists that I'm going to introduce without further ado. So, like I said with Scott, this is a very exciting, important, and new conversation. Well, not new, but new to the international stage. And so I'm really looking forward to having this today. It hits home for me and a lot of women, a lot of men in our community. And so, without further ado, first up, ringing all the way from the UK, she is not a 1, she is not a 2, she is not a 3, she is a 4-time UK champion, a 2-time world champion, and one half of Bird, the first female tag team to win nationals in the UK. She's also a beatboxer, a solo looper, a vocalist, a jazz musician. She's got it all. She's a member of the Beatbox collective as well. Bellatrix, thank you so much for being here today. Welcome. Thank you.
What an introduction. Thank you so much, Scott.
I'm so happy to have you today.
Privilege and an honor to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and joining this conversation with us. Before we get started, I do want to ask you what your hopes are for this conversation today.
What are my hopes for this conversation? I guess you know what, like I'm just so gassed that we are, and like you said, it's not as if this is the first time this conversation's been had. This conversation's been had a lot of times. I've had this conversation a lot of times with a lot of people, but there's something about this in that we are we're international, and there's something about this that feels like it's potentially going to kind of reach a little further and land a little weightier. And yeah, I guess my hopes are that we can kind of set into momentum some sort of like action for change that is already in motion, but that, you know, can always do with a little extra kick.
Yes, I completely agree. Thank you so much. That is the intention today, that extra kick, that extra spice. And we're just kind of seeing where it goes. Like I said, this is the first time that we're having this conversation on this scale. We're opening it up, and it is an open discussion today. So we're very thankful to have you. Thank you, Bellatrix. And next up, representing Beatbox France, we have the SBX 7-2 Smoke champion, and also the founder of the Pan Am Beatbox Hustlers Collective. This man is a musician, a beatbox activist, an art director, and he also works a lot to bridge education, arts, science, to promote beatboxing worldwide. So I'm really, really excited to have this perspective with us today. Scratchy, thank you so much for being here. Merci d'avoir venu aujourd'hui. Huge honor.
Thank you for having me. Super, super excited and honored to be part of this panel, so we can, evolve the conscience and have these important discussions to move forward.
Thank you so much. And from what I've been hearing, you've been doing amazing work in France as an ally for the female beatbox community. So I'm really excited to hear about all of that today and kind of share ideas on what you guys have been doing in France and how we can transfer that around the world. So thank you for coming today. All right, next
Pleasure.
up, the man, the myth, the legend that does not exist. We have another inspiration from the UK with us today. And this man is a 2-time UK champion, a world's semi-finalist, and has been a pioneer for beatboxing, and influenced thousands and thousands all around the world with his talents, with his art, with his creativity and outlook. And so it's a huge honor to have you here with us today, Reeps One. He's gone from speaking with the UN to working on AI projects called Second Self, and he's really leading our culture towards understanding our human potential. And so it's just so nice to have that perspective with us today. And so I wanted to ask you as well why you think this conversation is so important and what this means for our community to be opening up this discussion today.
I'm happy to kind of be invited. Like, I think my main goal today is to listen. I think I'm I'm really interested in, like, as it's been said, like, these conversations should be happening more. And I really liked what Scratchy said about anything that kind of improves the collective conscious of the culture is a really great thing. And anything I can do to help healthy discussion or just be a part of inclusion, I think is amazing. And today, I think the main thing that I'm interested in bringing is just some of the ideas that apply to other things like esports and chess, for example, which have had a similar problem when it comes to inclusion, and maybe just looking at how they've approached this problem, and just being open to listen. So thanks for having me, Yason and Crudem.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. We are opening up the conversation, and we will be chatting later on. I'm happy that you brought that up. We will be looking at other communities that have faced similar issues or circumstances that we have, and seeing if we can draw on those experiences. So I'm happy that you mentioned that. And moving on, last but definitely not least, we have this lovely woman. She's empowered and inspired me and many others over the years. I love her to bits. She's also the only person that can say that they've won a world champion title twice. A 3-time beat rhyming champion, loop station champion. Also the other half of Lightship Beatbox with Mark Martin. Kaila is a trailblazer and uses her talent as a tool for speech therapy, for confidence building, building leadership skills with youth all over the world. She's a pioneer, and I'm so happy that she's here to join us. In her spare time, she's working on initiatives such as this, or cutting edge research with NYU on exploring our voice. So Kaila, thank you so much for being here today and joining this conversation.
No,
did I cut out?
Yeah.
Oh,
no. Just yo, what's up, guys? I'm very excited to be here. It's really cool to actually see all your faces. I haven't seen you, Sparx, or Scratchy, Bella, Reeps. It's so happy to be here, and this is cool conversation and an important conversation. And like you said, it's cool. I don't think we've had so many people from so many different places talk about this. I know Sparx, we've talked about this a lot. Bella, we've talked about this. Even Scratchy, I mean, you were incredible. I remember last World Champs, you sat me down and you were like, Kaila, how do we help? I want to make the French community, more open for women. So I'm very excited to be here with you all. I think my goal for this at the end is just to be authentic, share my journey, and also share some tips of, how men in our scene can be better allies. I know that everyone wants to help out and everyone wants to make their women feel supported. So hopefully the men can leave today feeling like they have some actual actionalized goals or things that they can do after this to make sure that their community is strong.
Thank you so much, Kaila. I think that is a really good point. We're going to be talking about allyship a lot today and what the men can do in our community to create those spaces for women. And that's a huge focus. And hopefully by the end, listeners or anybody on the panel today, you can take away from this and build your toolbox on how we can further the female scene within our own community. So before we do get started, I want to mention to all the listeners that everyone on this panel is here for a reason. They all have their own journeys, experiences, and perspectives. And so it is possible that there are disagreements at some points, and that's okay, because it would be pretty boring if we just sat here agreeing all night. But I do want to ask that we maintain respect for one another and kindness towards each other, and we're just keeping the conversation open. And so without further ado, let's get started, folks. And if there's anybody in the chat that has questions throughout, by all means, we may have some time at the end to answer that, but we may not. And so I do want to start with Reeps on this one. You've been beatboxing, you've been in the community for quite some time. As quite a few people on this panel, I don't want to use numbers to age anyone, but I do want you to chat a bit about what the female scene in beatboxing was like when you first started, how it's changed and where you see it now. And you can speak on your own country's perspective or maybe worldwide, and we can go around after. But I'd like to speak about where it was, where it is now, and maybe some factors you think led to that.
So everything. Yeah, so it's such a huge topic. Like as you, like I'll start at the beginning, like you asked, which I was actually always so like female inspired by the UK community, and I have to say, like Bellatrix Bell has been sort of like paving the way from my beginnings as well. Just when I started, I remember messaging her saying like, wow, like it's so like you're so crazy. And it's in my mind as like as a 14, 15-year-old, like up and coming, maybe a little bit older beatboxer, like that you had these idols. And I'd seen Butterscotch before in 2000. When was the first world champs? So 2005?
2005, 6.
2005 or 6. Yeah. We can be corrected by the masses. And she was always very vocal about the idea that, and proved with the way that she like conducted herself, that there isn't a barrier, and that there wasn't a musical barrier. And I think that's a really important point, is that maybe some of the barriers that do come up are not about the music. It's about other aspects of the cultures and environments and attitudes that can make it difficult for everyone. Like Kaila said, this isn't a boy-girl thing, but the like Belle was a massive idol to me from the beginning, and she really sort of set me straight on my attitudes towards female inclusion in the culture, and that there wasn't a musical barrier. And obviously there can be discussions, like the obvious things that people kind of come up with is like physical differences and gender differences. But as we all know, as we've become a more progressive society, these are not linear kind of questions to ask. It's about other things. And I think that's what's going to come up a lot. And I'm really interested in learning and hearing more about the experiences people have had. And by taking parts in conversations like this, I love hearing, like giving people a voice, which is obviously what I'm always banging on about, hearing people's voices. But yeah, Belle has been a huge voice for me from the beginning, and set me straight with any kind of prejudice or ignorance I might have had as a young teenager.
Thank you. Yes. It's amazing that you have had that influence. I think that that can really help shape us in a lot of ways. And I'm hoping that the next generation growing up does have even more chances to be influenced in the same way. And so maybe on that, Belle, you could speak a little bit about the community that you were surrounded by when you first started out beatboxing, when you were younger, just 5 years ago, right? But
just the other day.
But if you wanted to speak about how it has changed since you've started beatboxing, what you've seen and noticed.
Yeah. So I started beatboxing around 2002, 2003. Back in the day when I was 13, 14. I'm not embarrassed of my age. I'm 31. And a really important thing to kind of point out at this point is that the internet wasn't actually really a thing at that point. Like we just about had the internet in our house. Like there was no YouTube. So actually, I'm not sure, like there were probably a lot more women in the world than I was possibly able to be aware of because of that. But at the time, I was on the forum humanbeatbox.com, which used to be beatboxing.co.uk. And I was very aware that it was a load of boys. And at this point, which was before I met up with any of the beatboxers. So I was introduced to beatboxing by a beatboxer called Jukebox, who I don't know if any of you guys have heard of, but he was one of the earlier beatboxers in the UK, and he was just a huge inspiration for me. And he was a family friend of mine, and he taught me the basics. And at that moment of him teaching, I just had no sort of concept of like gender and beatboxing. I was just like, oh, that's a cool thing, I'll do it. And then when I went onto humanbeatbox.com, I was like, oh right, this is like a lot of boys. And then I remember, and I was practicing and I was getting better, and I remember so clearly hearing Hope One, and discovering her and hearing her for the first time. And she was it was Eminem song. She was humming and beatboxing at the same time, and I was like, oh my word, that is a woman, she's doing it. And I was so young, you know, I was 13, and I was just like, I so very clearly remember my young little mind basically making the connection, oh, if there is another girl doing it, then I'm allowed to do it as well. And obviously, as you get older, you can kind of look at that and understand how important representation is. But I just so clearly remember that thought, oh, I'm allowed. There's one, so I'm allowed. And then a few years later, I saw Butterscotch, who I was just like massively inspired by. Butterscotch is an incredible musician as well as being a beatboxer. And yeah, so I was starting to see other women around the place as the internet sort of happened a bit more. But it was still, you know, it was still a really long time till I met another female beatboxer. And yeah, I guess like going to the World Championships in 2009 was the first time when I met a bunch of female beatboxers, and I don't know, like I'm feeling quite emotional and like slightly lost for words because of my emotionalness. But basically, there's like, when you are the only person in a room who is like of you, and you know, like ethnic minorities know what this feels like, queer people knows what this feels like, females in male dominated scenes know what this feels like. It's like that, it's like this really very, very tangible thing that's there that nobody else can see. And like people will say like, I don't know what the problem is, you're welcome, like here this space is for you as well, but you are the only one of you. And so when I went to the World Championships in 2009, and there was just a bunch of girls there, and we were all just like, I think we all kind of felt the same. We were all just like, oh my God, look, what the hell? And it was just a massive, massive thing for me, meeting other female beatboxers. So yeah, it kind of went from just really, really feeling like the only one, to starting to just find the others. And yeah, that was a hugely amazing thing.
Thank you for sharing and being so vulnerable about that. That is a very real feeling that I think a lot of women in our communities, and like you said, people who know minority, what that feels like, can resonate with. And for me, it was Kaila. When I first met Kaila in New York in like 2013 or something, I looked at her for a second in her doorway, just staring at her like, wow, are you like me too? But it is a very real feeling when you finally find that. And so thank you for sharing that. And I think that now what you said about representation is really important, because now as we see more women coming into our beatboxing scene, there's less of a revolving door type, because women are starting to realize that you're less alone. And so I think that when you say representation, how much it matters, it really means everything. And so thank you for sharing that. And this is a very vulnerable topic. I don't know if many people know this, but it is not something that's easy to talk about for a lot of us. And it does take some gumption to chat about. So thank you for sharing that. And moving on to, I would like to chat with Kaila a little bit, because I think that it's really interesting to look at how North America versus Europe. Unfortunately, we don't have anybody here from Asia for this panel, but hopefully the next one has dealt with women in the beatboxing scene. And so what was it? And Butterscotch did come from the US. And so I wanted to ask you, when you first started beatboxing, what the scene was like then, and maybe how you felt about it, and how it is now, looking at the US and Canada in 2020.
Yeah, so I mean, when I started beatboxing, I was really little, like elementary school, beatboxing at parties. And what's interesting was I never got faced with the girls can't beatbox until I got into the beatboxing community. You know, when I was out beatboxing and jamming with people, no one ever told me like, "Oh, girls can't beatbox. What are you doing?" You know. But as soon as YouTube kind of came about and I started watching YouTube videos, I saw guys' YouTube videos, I saw some girls' YouTube videos, and obviously the comments, what I was seeing, I was like, skirk, oh, damn, this is brutal. But I'm really lucky, and this is also why when I share my opinions as if people ask me like what should we do, should every country open it up, should we mix every country, I'm speaking from a very privileged place. I'm coming from a woman from the United States where I think that there is, you know, some more equality than other places in the world, and I'm super lucky because people like Chesney Snow, Kid Lucky, even like Rozelle and these people that came before us, they made it a point to make sure that our battles were always open. There's never been a time where we've segregated or had any segregated battles here in the United States. So when I came in, I had this opportunity where I could step into something and kind of prove myself. But when I first came in, I've never didn't meet another female beatboxer until MC Beats. And MC Beats was actually really inspiring to me because I was seeing a lot of hate for women on comments. You know, the girls can't beatbox, trying to tell us what we should be doing with our mouth instead, trying to tell us what we were able to do with our bodies, essentially, right? But when I saw MC Beats, she was from Long Island, where I grew up, which was just like an awesome coincidence. And she actually got a lot of respect online. So some of these other females where I saw some stuff or some of these other comments, when I saw her stuff, actually a lot of people really gave her props, you know, like Beatbox Queen, MC Beats. And so when I came into the beatboxing community, the first event I went to was with Kid Lucky. It was the American Human Beatbox Festival, and it was really cool because it wasn't a battle. So I came into something where the first time I met beatboxers, it was all about art and it was all about expressing yourselves. And like I said, like the people that came before us, the Chesney Snows and the kids, they were very adamant that men and women need to be on stage together. Women need to show what they can do and to not make it a battle. So, you know, when I first came in, there was like Butterscotch was beatboxing, but she wasn't necessarily in the scene. MC Beats was in the scene, and there was a few people, but actually back then the American beatboxing community was actually really small. I was really surprised when I judged the UK champs. You guys had like the same amount of competitors that we did as we do now, and that was like 2 years ago. So the UK scene is really big. I think in the US it's kind of hard to organize people because we're like this giant country. But being in New York, you know, we had people that really rallied for us. I think also in the US, it wasn't about battles as much. Our OGs and our pioneers really pushed being artistic. You know, Kid with beat rhyming, using your voice. Rozelle would literally tell people when they're on stage, like, we would make fun of people and be like, why you sound like the other person? Where's your originality? So I think that our philosophy in the States was a little different, but now I'm really happy because, you know, when you, Sparx, entered the Canadian scene, now it wasn't just the US that was not segregated. It was Canada and the US is, oh, look, and we have a girl in the top 16. And now in Mexico, they had DZ in the first year. She made it from the top 32 into the top 16. And there was another female this year in their category. So now the United States, Canada, and Mexico, all of North America is the only continent in the world where we don't segregate our men and women. Now, what I find from that is that the women, I can at least speak for the women in the all of North America. I mean, you too, Sparx, you're crazy. Like, I think that we have a confidence, and if guys try to tell us that we can't do something, we're like, get out of here, I'll show you, give me the microphone, let's battle each other. There is a confidence that has been instilled through other people who came before us. Bella, I completely agree with you. When you see a female that's beatboxing, then you go, oh, I can do this. And that's why I was really happy when I got into the American champs, and I became the first woman on our national level to beat a guy in the champs. But unfortunately, what came after that was in our scene at first, like, everybody made fun of that guy and was like, aha, you lost to the girl. But I think the more that I battled and the more that, you know, I won the loop station and the beat rhyming, and I was the vice champion for the US in 2015, I think when Reeps judged, every time that I beat somebody or got on stage, those comments went down less and less. It wasn't, aha, you're the guy that lost to the girl. It became, oh, you lost to Kaila, so what? she's sick. And then instead of it being like, oh, you lost to Kaila, so what's, it's sick. Now if you like talk to a guy in our country and the US, if there's like, ooh, you lost to a girl, they're the first ones to have our back and be like, yeah, she's sick. Do you hear the sound that she can do? Girls are crazy here. So I can pretty proudly say in our country that we really push for giving people the confidence to step up on the stage, no matter who you are, giving people props. We share a lot here of techniques and stuff. You know, the US has the 3-day big weekend where everyone's in the same hotel. It's kind of like this big convention as well. So things have definitely changed in that regard. I think that the openness in our country is great. And I actually find that when I go to like the World Champs or GBB or these international events is when I get called a female beatboxer the most. In the US, it's just like, oh, look at Kaila, she's a sick beatboxer. But when I go there, people introduce me as a female beatboxer. Like, oh, this is Kaila, she's a female beatboxer from the US. And that's always very strange to me because that's not the lingo that we kind of talk, like you're just a beatboxer here. So I do see the difference between the US and kind of the rest of the world. I'm really proud of North America. I'm proud of the women who are coming up. Same with UK. You guys just opened up and Kimmy came in 4th place. Like, shout out to Kimmy. That is incredible. And again, right, it shows that women can hit the scene. I mean, Bella, you were saying you came in 3rd place, right, at a battle. So the more women we have that can pave the way, the more that girls can see that they can do it and that they have the ability to do whatever they set their mind to.
Yes, yes, exactly. Thank you so much. I think that I've seen a lot of women come up in the US in the past couple of years, which is incredible. Would you say that the biggest factor behind that is the philosophy, the outlook, the organizers that you have for beatboxing events that has drawn so many women out to events?
Yeah, I think that like every year at the champs, right? Like if you when there was me who was on the stage, the women came in, and because they saw me on stage with the men, we didn't have to tell people you're equal, right? The women came into the event and they saw me on stage, and it's something that you don't have to say. It's like you're seeing the action of us being all on stage together and everyone hugging and showing respect. I think more women in our scene too. And I'll say this right now. When it comes to the question of should every country in the world be open, I can't answer that question for you. Every community is going to have their own wants and needs. Every group of females in your country, what the guys should really be doing is talking to them, asking them what they want to do, right? Here in our country, we see that the girls, because they are battling with all the guys, they're getting really good really fast. Because even if you lost 10 times to the guys here are battling all the guys and they're sparring and they are like, you know, getting the best practice in, going against the top in the country. So when the girls are in the ring with that too, sure, maybe you don't get in the first year, maybe you don't get in the second year, but the 3rd year that you try out for the American champs, that's the year that you got in and you are on an insane level because you've been practicing and competing in this like beatbox dojo with everyone who's good. You know, and I think that that's what we're seeing more here. In the US, if it's like, doesn't matter who you are, if you're good, you get in, and if you don't, then you learn what you need to do to become the best version of yourself and the best artist and beatboxer that you could be.
Exactly. Great. That was awesome. Thank you. I am going to move on to Scratchy now, because Scratchy, you have been organizing quite a bit, working with women in France. And so I kind of want to build off of what Kaila said about listening to the woman, because it seems to have been working really well for your community so far with the Panem Beatbox Hustler Collective and the work that you've been doing with Preacha and Julieta. So if I would like if you can to chat a bit about what you've been doing. And you've been in the scene actively, you said, for about 5 years now. And so what was it when you kind of walked in? Because that would have just been a few years ago. And where are you seeing the community in France grow, especially with these initiatives that you all are doing?
Well, thank you for asking. So first of all, I just want to shout out all the active women in France right now who are actually in the organizations, who are on stage, who are in the public supporting the events that we've been doing for the past 2 or 3 years that I've seen and that I've been a part of. And now to answer your question, my first big event was the French Champ 2015. And when I first got here, I didn't really know anybody personally. I just knew some names, you know, because I've discovered the beatbox since 2006. So I was like literally a bathroom beatboxer because I was just like enjoying my beats on my own, you know. And then when I got onto the champs, I saw there was a so the separation was already there, but the category exists like since 2006. Actually, there was a female champ in 2006, although there was no battle. But we come a long way. We have a society that has its wrongs. Let's talk about it. It's pretty sexist in France, but we can actually take this drawback and make it a positive. Like in, I'll explain later how I managed to take that as an advantage. But basically, in 2015, what it was the final. It was a Tresim versus Lake City, and it was only two girls in the scene. And then 2016, there were three girls, but the battle got canceled. So the ladies actually went into the elimination of the guys. So they got integrated into the top 40, but then they didn't make it to the top 60. So there were no scene for the women to be shown. And representation, as you said, guys, is like super, super important. It's effective, like beyond thinking. Is I've had like to realize this in other opportunities where kids. I just showed videos of Julieta and Prisha jamming together, just not thinking like they were actually going to be like, oh, I want to do this. And then like an hour later, they'd be like, hey, Scratchy, here is a composition we did. And I was like, what? And I just taught them like the basics, and then they, out of their own initiative, they were like, okay, we're gonna do this because like we saw some ladies. And actually, I want to shout you guys as well, Kaila, Bellatrix, Sparx, because without you guys and the work that you've been doing, I wouldn't have been able to pull the Feel My Beat workshop that I did, because when I started the Pen and Beatbox Sisters project, I was working in a company. I was going into events. So 2015, I went to the French Champs. Then I went to 2016 GBB. That's where I met Kaila. That's where I saw you on stage, Reeps, as well. And then, yeah, you were the only women on stage, actually, Kaila, out of all the guys, I think. And for me, it was super important, like to bring a change to the female scene, because it all started as well. Like it was evident because I went to negotiate a deal, like to be supported for an event I wanted to put up, and then the boss of the venue was like, "Wow, that's super nice. They lots of talent, loop station super cool, beatbox super cool, but I don't see any women in the public." I'm like, and at that time I was just like very passionate about beatbox. I didn't really think about these questions, and I started to think about this, and then he told me like, yeah, if there's no women in the event, there's no use. Like, okay. So I thought about like the ways to change it, and I thought about representation, and I thought to myself, okay, let's bring the numbers up about women interested in beatboxing by creating this workshops exclusively reserved for women, with a friend of mine, Kaipi, who's a rapper. She's like a dope rapper. She just put out her EP yesterday, and she's doing an amazing job, because in rap it's also super segregated. And actually, the girls got interested into the beatbox. I was a nobody in the scene, so guys would never have come to my workshop. But I put up a free workshop in exchange of recording and rehearsal time and stage time for a cultural center. It was just like, it worked perfectly well. And I asked, while I was doing all this work, I was actually also asking the girls like what they wanted to, did they want to perform? I have this opportunity to perform. I was contacted by other organizations. There was this organization called Call Me Fancy. It's rap organization that puts forward women into the rap scene, and they called me to do a showcase one time. And at that time, we were past the French Chef 2017, and well, I thought, well, Prisha is available. She has never done any showcase. Let's put her up, and that's pretty much it. And now, I think, fast forward 2020, with all the work with Prisha and Julieta in the second year. So we run this workshop for 2 years. We had about 20 girls all year long getting interested in beatbox, and in 2020, so from 2015, two girls in the finals. 2020, it was 13 girls getting selected at French Champ. So
Wow.
we come a long way. We come a long way, but there's still a lot of work to do from the public, in the organizations, and on stage. But and one last thing. And nowadays we have about 15 organizations organizing events all year long, and four of the most active ones are headed by women. So shout out to Clémentine, Philippine, Tressim, and Aliénor from Toulouse. So yeah.
Thank you. Shout out to all those wonderful women pioneering, paving the way in France. I heard Carlotta she did a chat about women in the scene in France on the Franco-Microphonie battle a couple of weeks ago. And there were so many initiatives happening in France. I was really, really impressed by that. And so thank you, Scratchy, for the work that you've been doing. And that kind of leads us into our next topic on allyship. I think that what you have been doing is a really great showcase of allyship, and the work that you've been doing with women. And so I kind of wanted to move it on to Bellatrix to ask you, what does it mean to be an ally and show up for the women in the community?
Well, I guess the one thing that sort of springs to my mind is that there is a difference between the people who will say that they care and say that it's something that they believe in, and the people who are agents for change. And in my experience, most of the guys in the scene will agree that there is a problem, and will agree that they want to help, and will sort of put their words there. But I'm not sure. But I'm not sure at the moment how many of them are prepared to actually, do what Scratchy's doing, and taking action and seeing it as an issue that is actually very specific to them as well. Who is that voice?
That's the voice in our heads that no one else can hear.
So yeah, I guess like I really, really appreciate it when my like my loads of my best friends are, like Harry Reeps is one of my best friends, and the guys from the Beatbox Collective. I'm really close with all these guys, and I really feel like an allyship from these boys, and I feel like they are. I'm getting emotional again. Can't stop myself. I feel like I have a circle of men around me, who are pillars. Pillars who basically will listen and are prepared to take on board the things that the women in their communities need. And I feel like that is possibly, I mean, obviously, yeah, I mean, they've got a friend who they care about, I'm someone that they care about, and so it's important for them to, and so they can kind of put themselves in my shoes. And I think that maybe a lot of particularly some younger guys on the scene, and like potentially haven't realized how this affects them, because I think that I think that it's true that patriarchy has a negative impact on men as well as women, and on everybody. So yeah, I guess I feel like it's really it's going to be really key for the men in the scene who have status, because the beatboxing community, like, we have people that we like put on pedestals, and everyone's like, oh my god, it's them, and that's a thing that happens in our community. And I think that it's great when people who have status are prepared to basically open their mouth and share. Like having, like, Harry is an absolute sort of pillar of like at the forefront and the cutting edge of beatboxing, and Harry, you have been for a really, really long time, and you're a beatboxer who has been around for a long time and continues to be on the cutting edge, which is amazing. And so I think that the fact that you're here and that you're having this conversation and that you are a part of this is really important, because it shows to other people who maybe don't realize why this is relevant to them. They're like, oh, well, Reeps seems to think this is important, so maybe I should listen, yeah, I guess in the same way that representation is important for women, like representation of men taking this issue seriously is important as well.
Agreed. It definitely gives an ethos effect when there's someone with a certain status having this conversation. I completely agree with you. And on that, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to name as well that I feel like super aware that this conversation, like, we're talking in very binary, we're talking in a very binarized man woman like language world, and like we live in a world where unfortunately that is what's happened. Like, in a culture, I certainly exist in a culture where what's happened is gender has been completely binarized, and there's like a huge conversation, and like there's a huge amount more conversation to be had around that. But I just wanted to name it because as I speak in like man woman binary terms, I always feel uncomfortable.
Thank you for mentioning that. This is definitely something that was considered when we wanted to have this conversation about how the beatboxing scene has just become the gender factor in it has become very male female, and it creates a conflict and a strange emotion for people who do not identify as male or female, non-binary, trans, whatever it may be. And so that is definitely something we will be talking about in a short bit. But thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate it. And on the last note of allyship, I do want to bring Reeps in, having Belle just speak about what it was like. Yeah, I'll bring you too, Kaila. Having Belle just speak about what it means for you to be an ally. What does it mean for you to be an ally, and how can men do the same thing and show up for a woman?
Can you hear me on Discord now? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So that works now. Awesome. Yeah, I kind of wanted to reply to Belle, but I didn't want to kind of interrupt. But yeah, like I'm guided by inspiration. Like, I think anything that inspires people to open their mind and to not have like a knee-jerk reaction to anything is extremely healthy. And like, I get a warm, fuzzy feeling to have Belle even for a second say that in some way I've separate to being there as a friend, which I always will be. And there is that absolutely unquestionable like love and respect between us, but just helping tackle this conversation. Because I think a fact is, with any progressive conversation, there are so many ways you can come at it from. And also what it does is it has like a fractaling of more questions. Every time you answer one, it opens up 7 other doors.
So that's why pushing things forward can be like very, very difficult. So I guess what I'm interested in is understanding maybe the stereotypical response of a stereotypical beatboxer. And for me, I try to start there because it's the most obvious place. And I've had a few experiences at GBB last year, 2019. I had a female beatboxer come up to me because I do get, when I'm at these events, I get lots of people come up for advice, which is awesome. But it gets very intense. But I try my best to be there and listen. And this female beatboxer said, like, this group of guys are saying this about me. Like, I'm just trying to hang out. I'm really upset. Like, what is your advice? And it was really tough because with the specific situation of what she was saying, outside of me saying, like, first of all, let me know if you ever see me and you have a problem, like, come up to me and ask me, and I'm here to help you any way I can. And obviously saying that to believe and understand that there is this ignorance, and that isn't everyone, and together we can, as like, there are people that will listen to you and understand you. When it became something more nuanced of like, okay, how am I actually going to solve this problem right now? I realized I didn't know. Like, I didn't know the exact way to fix this. And I think it's because it's like I say, I want to be an ally. I want to represent everyone. I want to make sure voices are heard. But then I realized that maybe my job here is to just listen and to make sure that the female community is getting as much time and respect as possible. And it's not necessarily because, like, there's a classic guy thing, and I've been bad for this in the past, not just in work, in my relationships, is you try to fix things. It's like you think you need to fix it and you need to know the answer. But yeah, keeping the questions happening, like keeping the discussion going, and like making it inclusive. So the most stereotypical guy, 15-year-old beatboxer becomes interested in being a part of the discussion. Because in some ways, like, it's a controversial thing to say, that stereotypical beatboxer can be the enemy of progress in the context that we're talking about, because young people are so cruel and playgrounds are some of the most dangerous places for any soul or human being. And it's such a difficult dance to punish like behavior that leads to prejudice and pain and non-inclusion, but then doing it just the right amount that you don't lose someone or create a pain response. And making that dance, like, I have my subjective opinion of how to tackle that, and I speak for my friends, like any female beatboxers listening, like, I'm always someone that I hope you can sort of message and ask, but I want to listen and represent the culture as much as possible. And like, I've used the hashtag a few times at the Future of Beatbox is Female, and I got some messages like, why did you say that? What do you mean? I'm like, guys, we're trying to grow a culture. Like, we're trying to create inclusion, and it makes the pot bigger. But there is this very strange, like, pain response that can happen. I don't want to talk too much, but there's a really interesting concept. I think it's the author called Eric Toll. It's called The Power of Now. And he talks about something called the pain body. And the fact that when people are annoyed or frustrated or feel attacked or they're insecure or challenged, they can talk from pain or frustration. And I think a lot of young guys, when they're challenged or they feel anxious about, exactly as Kaila said, the battling and losing to an amazing female beatboxer, that anxiety can pop up in all kinds of nasty ways, and you have to clock it, but then it also comes with some compassion. So yeah, any way that I can help all that flow so that everyone can have a better understanding, like, that's that's what I'm interested in. And anytime I can be an ally, like, and be willing to make mistakes, to be willing to ask the wrong thing, maybe if our guys out there can be willing to, like, do the same thing, like, you're not always going to get it right, like, you're not always going to say the right thing, but just be a conversation, because something amazing might happen.
Agreed. Thank you. I think the biggest takeaway is listening, and we've said that quite a few times tonight. And listening and then taking from what you've heard can then drive the action. If you're not listening, then you don't really know what you're doing. And on that note, Kaila, I think you wanted to say something about allyship.
Yeah. So, I think at the heart of this, what I really want women and men to know is, one, we need to give women more of a voice and more of a control of what they want to do in the scene. I think one example of something that just happened recently was, I feel like this conversation has been a little bit like peaceful and kind of dead in the water a little bit. And the one thing that kind of revigored this conversation was when Swiss Beatbox wanted a 7 to smoke for females. So, first of all, big love to Swiss Beatbox. I think it's amazing the work that we're doing. But one thing that I saw there was that when it came to making that decision, I know that all of the women, as soon as we saw that post, we started all Instagram messaging each other. And we said, hey, did they reach out to you? Did they ask if this was a thing? Did anybody ask if this was something that was wanted from the women? So, I mean, when I questioned it, I asked that. I said, hey, did anybody ask the women? I'm just curious to see why this was brought up, because it wasn't like that before. So we were trying to figure out the rules, right? What came from that was one, men then telling me that the sexism isn't as bad anymore. Telling me, no, it's different. Look, Chihuahua is cool and Penchikata gets love and blah, blah, blah. So it seemed like when I was then sharing what my experience was, men were almost trying to explain to me that that wasn't the case, or not listening, like Harry said, like Reeps said. And then, once we had this conversation, I think it made the girls nervous, because it felt like a group of men who made a choice on behalf of women. This is what women will want. So then what happened after that was, people are having more conversations and more conversations. And then there was somebody who was from a pretty big organization, beatboxing organization, and a comment they made after they saw the girls were talking about this online and being like, hey, should we have this? What's going on? An actual comment from somebody was, any girl who competed in the world champs and is now complaining should go stick it where the sun don't shine. I'll say it nicely. Because you're a hypocrite if you've battled in a female-only battle and now you're complaining that, but now you're saying that there shouldn't be female battles. So that is an example right there of men making decisions for women, right? Not asking the women in their community what they wanted. And then when there was questioning that came from it, and when there was anger, it was our fault, and that we were being told that we shouldn't question this, and that we shouldn't feel any curiosity or anger towards this. Now, I think that is a situation right there where I think that women as well, we should have a space where we can talk about these things and help organizers around the world. If organizers have questions, my biggest thing to you is go to the women in your community. If you're questioning whether you should have a female-only category or a mixed category, go to the women in your community. Have a Zoom meeting like this. You don't even have to have everybody together in a room. Have actual conversations about this. If you're a guy and a girl is questioning something or bringing up topics, listen to them. Try to figure out why the question is coming up, or why maybe there is anger, or why maybe there isn't distrust in that situation. The women, if there are questions, it's not coming because we want attention or we want something. I think in that situation, as just one example, was we got nervous because we were like, whoa, are things going backwards? What? Wait a minute, why is this happening now, right? So I think if there was more communication too, if this wasn't just like a surprise and it was talked about with women or talked about beforehand, I think that all the women would be like, oh, actually, then when the women found out, oh, this is because the women can still go to the battle and they want to give the women more prizes, or they want to do this. Oh, all of a sudden, oh, great, this is awesome. But for that example right there was something that I haven't felt in a really long time. And when I heard that specific person basically tell me to go stick it somewhere, because I was talking about, I said that I didn't want to battle with just women anymore, and now I'm a hypocrite. But in my particular situation, this is just mine, when I was the vice champ of the US in 2015, the very next battle I did was the female world champs. Now, I don't have a say in that. But does that mean that now I don't get to participate in a world champion experience through my hard work because of this? So I think for men, it's really understanding that there is a difference. I think just energetically, when you go to the events, you know, when girls are all hanging out, it is a different vibe than guys. I think, you know, sometimes girls don't want to like battle head to head or go really hard at events. They just want to like chill and jam. One thing I've heard from women in my own scene talking about how to feel more accepted into groups is leaving just an easy way, leaving space for people musically when you're jamming. I've heard that a lot in my scene where sometimes when their ciphers are happening at the battles, if it's the men in a cipher, they're not necessarily leaving the room for a girl to come in and do her part. So I think just being observant of that. And I think, you know, Bella, I love that you were talked about being non-binary, because that's a huge thing too, right? We are thinking about this in terms of men and women, but we have people in our community in the States that are non-binary, that are trans, that don't identify as either of these things. So now if we have an event, where do they come in? One of our previous champions, if we had a male and female rule, I don't know if they would compete, and I don't know where they would place themselves. So they deal with that. So I think just being more open, making sure that the conversation isn't just about men and women, because then we're also excluding this whole other members of our community and making them feel really uncomfortable about their voice, and realizing that when we do give women more say in what they want to see their community become, we also give people on even more you know, the LGBTQ community, the trans community, the non-binary community, we also give them access to their voice and their power and what they want to see in their community as well. So Harry, I love what you were saying. Also, Scratchy, I have to shout you out, because the first time I met you, you sat down with me and you were like, specifically, hey, what do you think as a woman could be cool for our community? What do you think as a woman? And you specifically as well were like, hey, what are the best tips to not make me make a decision for the women? You came up to me and you said, hey, how do you think I can make my women in my scene feel more confident for them to decide and them to use their voice and them to figure out what they wanted to do? And I thought that was a perfect example of how to be a true ally. He came, he asked for support from a female, but the question was not what can I do to make something for women? He specifically came and said, hey, what do you think is my best way that I can make the women feel more confident for them to have these decisions, or them to have more of their, like, build their own community? And I thought that was really cool that you were coming from it that way, that you just wanted to support in the best way that you could. You wanted to give them confidence so that they knew that they have control to make the community the way that they want to be. And I think that's a really great example for some other men in the beatboxing community.
Yes. Thank you so much, Kaila. I hope a lot of people at home are taking notes right now. But I do want to speak a bit on, oh yeah, Belle, go nuts. Is that your finger going up?
That was my finger going up. Yeah, I just wanted to respond to something that Kaila said, because you kind of briefly touched on sort of shaking things up a little bit, and I think that like that was really potent for me. The fact that, you know, this conversation had become pretty sterile, and what happened with Swiss Beatbox in that Seven to Smoke battle is essentially people got well uncomfortable. And do you know what? People need to get well uncomfortable, and we need to get comfortable with having these uncomfortable conversations, because people can be so fragile. I'm trying not to swear. People can be so fragile, you know, and like, and I think that it's really important, you know, we need to be able to name stuff without people feeling like we're pointing fingers at them. And we need to be able to say, this is not okay, without other people going like, I haven't done anything, it wasn't me, it's you. And I think it's really important to shake up the conversation and shake up the vibes. Let's get uncomfortable, people. I think that that's a really good thing. So like what actually happened there, like, was painful, and we need to like feel that. We need to feel the pain. We need to not just keep going like, oh, I don't want to, it's uncomfortable, because that's how you don't move on. You have to feel the pain and the discomfort of everything. So yeah.
I love that.
Anyway,
and I think
that's what I wanted to say.
Just to touch on that too, you know, I think, again, using this example from Swiss Beatbox, right? Like, I think they did a great thing. Their intentions were so pure. But if you are, if you are someone who is not of a community making decisions on behalf of a community, you're just guessing what these people want, right? You're just saying, oh, females, yeah, maybe they want this thing. Maybe they want this. Hey, maybe it'd be cool if we did this. But the best way to make us have leaps and bounds in this community in terms of inclusion, equality, people feeling like this is a safe space to come in, because let's face it, beatboxing is such a vulnerable thing. You're making weird faces, weird music with your mouth. You have to practice doing these things that are not normal and very outside of the mainstream, right? So I think the way that we make everyone feel included is to ask them. And if there are questions that come up, like Bella said, like, don't be like, well, I didn't do anything. It was pure intentions and we didn't, well, why are you guys getting mad? This is ridiculous. Being like, oh, let's use this all as a learning lesson. We did this thing and this was the reaction. Let's find out why that reaction happened. Let's see why did people get mad at first? Why did people feel distrustful? Where is that coming from in our female community that many, many women at that time, I mean, I had people, all of the women in the community messaging me being like, did you say something? Did something happen? That was happening. And let's the men in our community open up that space to the women to hear what they feel comfortable with. Ask questions. No, I don't think any woman is going to get uncomfortable or upset at you if you say, hey, what do you want to do to make this scene better? How can I support you? That's literally the easy. If you take one thing from this, all the men out there, if you go to a woman in your community and say, hey, what is the best way that I can support you in the female scene right now today? What is one thing I can do? They'll give you an answer. You know, they'll say, hey, I don't feel like you're leaving space for me when I jam. Or like, hey, I don't really like it when you call me a female beatbox. Or like, hey, I feel like I get objectified sometimes when I come into the scene. I feel like I'm like eye candy instead of people respecting me for my musicianship. I feel like I'm only getting this because I look a certain way, right? The women will tell you straight up. So if you don't feel uncomfortable, right? If we, like Bella said, if we all get comfortable doing the uncomfortable, instead of it being this thing where we're just guessing and being like, maybe this will work, maybe this will work, should we try this? Let's open it up this year and see what happens. Just have the conversation. The women, or if not the women, people who are trans in your community, LGBTQ, people of any minority of the community, we can talk to them, ask them exactly what would be the best for them. What do you need? What do you want? How can I help? They'll tell you, because they're the ones feeling it and going through that. And I think that will take us from here to here without all the messy, like, oops, that didn't work, that didn't work, that didn't work. We can just go, let's try this. Ooh, that worked. All right, let's try this. Boom, that worked, right? So I think that's the easiest thing, is just what Bella said. Ask people. Let's sit in the uncomfortableness for a while, because if we just rip off the Band-Aid and we really talk about this and we really hear from women around the world what their experiences are and what they want, then we can heal that thing. We're not just like feels like we're picking a scab and it gets bloody for a while and then we just let it dry and we don't talk about it. And then like let's let this heal. Let's figure this out. Let's get into the muckiness for a little bit. Ask every woman in their community what they want, what you could do better, how we could build this. And I think that we will have a beautiful, really, really open and really feeling good community from there.
Thank you, Kaila. And I want to emphasize a point that you've said a few times, is listening to the woman in their community. I can't, for example, from Canada, make decisions for what you should do in your Chilean female beatbox community. You need to listen to the woman in their communities. It is good to consult outside, like Scratchy did with Kaila and whatnot. But if you're not listening to the woman in their respective countries, then you're still not making decisions for them. And also, I think on that note too, when there was the controversy with the Swiss Beatbox 7 to Smoke, one thing that I really learned from that was that the opinions of female beatboxers were very generalized, like we should all think the same, when in fact we all come from different parts of the world. We've all had different experiences. Kaila and I have never had to do segregated battles until we went to Europe, right? And so take that with a grain of salt when there are women who are questioning decisions of international. When it becomes international, you are now adding everyone to that collective, and you need to see that all of those experiences and all of those opinions are valid. Kaila, for example, has still been a beatboxer for 15, 20 years, like very long, most of her life. And her opinion on that topic is just as valid, even if it's a disagreement. So I think that listening with that open ear is extremely important to the women in your community, and being okay with people disagreeing with you and actually taking that and seeing why. And so on that note, I think I want to skip a couple of questions because I don't want to run out of time before we get to some fun ones. And so I think I want to move right into segregated battles. And here I kind of wanted to, instead of debate what we should have, because like I said, we all come from different experiences, I would like to discuss the pros and cons of them. And so I think there's definitely a difference between country to country how they do this. And so I would like to start this one with France, with Scratchy, just talking about what are the pros and cons that you've seen with segregated battles.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, from a French perspective?
Yeah, from yours.
So, so I've talked to a lot of women in our community about this. So we're definitely not the best at this, but we're working, and we're working towards mixed city. So for example, all year long we have like a lot of battles around the territory. For example, I think in November, very often there might be like 3 or 4 battles in a weekend, and all of these battles are mixed. So we encourage women to participate. All the organizers around France try to have at least maybe a female judge in the panel, participants as well. In some cities, it's more difficult to have more women somehow, but we try to work towards more inclusiveness, even in the messages. I know in Toulouse, Aliénor, who is the head of the Beatbox community, the Beatbox Association, tries to include women in the way she writes, and in a very neutral way, actually, so everyone can identify. So regarding the French, however, we segregate for now. This is the we've run the questions around the competitors, and for now that's what they want. They want to have the training experiences. They want to have the visibility to inspire young teenagers that are in the audience, to encourage them to beatbox. For now, it's not the con of that is that the category is not that well supported, but we're moving. It's way better nowadays. Like, used to be, the category was almost on the verge of being scrapped up because of time problems, or it could be that people would go out and smoke. But nowadays, there is so much interest into the category that there were definitely more people encouraging women at this edition. When you will see the videos coming out, just check out, there are far more people like screaming than before, because like there's like 10 women who went on stage to participate. There was even a kid who's like 14 years old. She was a fan of blah blah blah, and people are like, oh, but and they were so dope. And nowadays, like, Prisha and Julieta are very interesting cases, because they were the one who this couple years they went all across France participating to the battles and stuff. So then now they're used to battles. So I think they would want at some point to battle guys, because let's face it, there's a lot of guys in the French community, for example. So there's 100 wildcards that are sent to get into the top 40, and in France, all the girls who want to go on stage send in a wildcard, and then they get taken in, and then we made a top 4. But we hope that in a couple years there are far more women that feel confident enough to go into the male scene. I mean, when they sign up to get into the champs, they can select which category they want to compete in. So we're not. I mean, if Prisha or Julieta maybe one day wants to, tramp their cards, and okay, I'm fighting into the male scene. So what? Let's get it. I think we want to see some change.
Sorry, did you? So in France, is it if you sign up, you can sign up? Like if I went to France to compete in the national championships, I can currently sign up for the male category. Is that what you said?
For the male, yeah. I mean, what prevent this? For example, we have actually 2 cases of transformations. So so there was a Raven who went from the male to female category, and then Willie, who I think will go next year maybe into the. I mean, at least he wants to go to compete in the male category. So we have to respect like wherever they feel more suitable to compete. So.
Okay. And
But in terms of visibility, for now, it's a strategy. Yeah.
have you guys had the conversation in the French community that is there going to be an end, or is it going to be women will decide the female category will stay open, and if women want to compete in the male, then they can, and then they'll slowly transition? Is that where you guys are leading?
Not officially. It's more into among women, but like I said, the category is having quite a pull right now. But I don't know if they feel confident. So that's what I've gathered in terms of opinions. I don't know if they feel confident enough to be able to get into the top 40, for example.
Gotcha. Okay.
Even for the most talented. So
Yeah.
Is it possible I could respond to that?
Yeah.
Is that all right? Yeah, just in theme of this question, because when it comes to my subjective opinion, like I said, I want to listen as much as possible. But with any difficult problem, one thing that you can get towards something more objective is case studies. So other cultures or situations which have had studies or just things happen that we can learn from. And it's no longer necessarily about my opinion. It's about something that is happening or happened in the world that we can learn from. And I think that the chess culture is a very good reference point, because at the moment on the top chess server, you have at any given point 200,000 people playing. So imagine 200,000 beatboxers like online at any given point. So this is a huge culture. And I think it's very interesting to kind of think about, is in beatbox culture, are the elites the same as the community? And is what the elites want the same as what the general community wants? Or like hobbyists who just join? And I think it's a very difficult question to answer, because I think elite in anything have a very different experience or confidence than hobbyists or people that want to kind of come in and out. So chess has had a big problem with having females play chess. And there's a really incredible elite female chess player called Judith Polgar. So at 11, she was destroying grandmasters across Europe. She was triggering many men who could not take the idea of such a young female coming in and taking away any type of ego trip that they were having off of it. And it was just extremely challenging. And she grew up to be an absolute world-class player. And she's always believed that it should be open, and it should be something that if there's no separation, it will raise the standard of female chess. And the reason that she thinks that there's less female chess players isn't down to the capacity of females playing chess. It's because it can be a really, I was going to swear, bad environment for females to be in. It can be toxic. Imagine an 11-year-old girl being in a hall of 1,000 sort of 45-year-old men, like pre-internet. Like, it's not cool, is it? So the problem was about having, not overcoming or making it inclusive for the elite. It became a question of how can we make sure that the female community keeps growing. And as someone who judged all over the world last year, there are less females beatboxing in battles. It is reclining to, like, say 10 years ago when I judged the Japanese beatbox championships. There was a female category. There was a much richer community. That's now been replaced by a children's battle in Japan. So you're seeing less and less female sort of inclusion, and it's a huge problem. So again, for the elite players in chess like Judith Polgar, at first she was talking a lot about raising the standard of chess, when now it's actually about, all right, how can we get more females playing chess? And that's where that's why they've kept titles like female master. So what you have is Grandmaster is at the top, then you have International Master, and then you have, if someone wants to accept it, there is a title of Female Master, which I thought that doesn't help. Like, that's kind of perpetuating that there's a difference between men and women. But the argument is that it's about creating a culture where women feel comfortable. And what I thought the Seven to Smoke was based off this idea that when you asked, there was females at the camp, young, who were even like dancers, for example, and when it came to like entering a battle, they'd only be willing to enter a female battle. So it seems to be a really difficult one, because we want to create elites, and that's the goal. But then it seems like there is actually something more comforting about a female beatbox battle, a female beatbox community, a female specific environment, because it's a much better experience. And you've all mentioned it. So how you tackle that's one thing, but I thought, looking at the chess world, this idea of, and now there is a huge explosion in female chess players. It's really expanding, and it seems to be about keeping that separation as an option. And I just wanted to kind of like reference that from another culture. It's not my opinion, but it's just something that's interesting to think about, is giving that safe space for the hobbyists and the people that want to come in and just jam or just like enter. And I thought, I'd share that idea.
I think it's really important to point out what you said at that last part about it being an option. I think that and I've seen this. You've seen this in the chess scene. I've seen this in the break dancing, the street dancing scene in Canada, at least. And I've chatted with a lot of street dancers about this. Of the shift really happened when it was in their hands, when they had the option. It was no longer, this is not a choice for you. You have to be in this segregated battle. And there is definitely, like you said, there's definitely a balance when we talk about pros and cons between representation and elites, as we call it. And so I want to shift that over to Kaila, if you had a response for that, or what you have to say about segregated battles. Obviously, as we've mentioned, North America, we grew up without. And then moving over to Europe, it was not an option. And so what have you seen over the years are the pros and cons of segregated battles?
Well, I'll say, as an organizer of the American Champs, right, I have an experience. But if the women came up to me tomorrow and said, Kaila, we want our own female battle, I would have to put my opinions or what I think on the side to give them the space that they want, right? If that's what women want, we will give them that space. That being said, there are definitely pros and cons to each, right? I think having women on stage at an event is great, right? It shows women in the crowd that women can beatbox. I think when you just let any girl who signs up on stage, though, that shifts maybe the perception of women in beatboxing. I think also when there is a separate female category, although women are on the stage and women in the crowd are seeing and witnessing women beatbox, they're also witnessing them beatbox as a lesser event. And right now what's happening is kind of like Scratchy said, if sometimes you go and you see the female category, half the room leaves. So you're giving these women a space, but the respect isn't there and the support isn't there. I think it definitely could create a space, if that's what the women want, for them to practice and for them to just get on stage and practice stage presence and practicing the art of battling. That's a pro. The con is, though, you're not battling with people who are at the top of the skill level. So it's also not necessarily helping you. You're not getting as good as you could as fast as you could, right? I think that even if you lose to the best, then you know exactly what you need to work on, right? Or if you lose to somebody who's in this category. I think the pro of what Scratchy said was, hey, if these girls want to try out to the men category, they can get in. If they don't, they go onto their own category where they can still be represented. But then again, the problem is there now, once a woman gets into the man category, then it's not a man and woman category anymore. So why are we calling it that, right? I think I had a really good conversation with some of the female beatboxers at the last GBB where we were talking about, okay, what would it even look like if you opened it up, right? Let's talk about this. We were all having a discussion. And I was saying, okay, well, do you guys think that you could battle the men at this point? And they said, no, we're not good enough. That's why we like our own category. So I said, okay, is there a female beatboxer who is really good who could get over with the men? And they said, oh, well, Flashbox would be able to, especially when Flashbox was really hitting it at her prime. She could have went and beat the men. And I said, okay, cool. So what happens now when Flashbox goes over to the man category? Does that mean that only she's allowed over? Or does that mean that all the girls have to get really good so that they can go over, right? And again, once you have, if Flashbox went over to the man, now it is not a man and female category. Now it is A team and B team. So does that mean that you're going to let the men go over to the female category? What happens there? What happens to the people who are trans, non-binary, people who don't want to identify with the gender? Because now you've broken what the perception is. It's not a man and female category. I think, again, what women want when it comes to battling, if women want to have their own female category, like Harry was saying, and they really feel confident and they want that female championship and this is really awesome, great, that's awesome. You should definitely have it and we should create spaces for that. But I think that the battles that are female-only battles should be coming from women that want that and they want to have that space and they want to practice and train. And I think that also the pro is when you talk to a woman and the woman says, we want to have female beatbox championships, that's freaking awesome. The whole goal is for all the women in their scenes around the world to feel like they have enough say in their community. They have enough, a responsible role in their community to make that happen. So I think regardless, if you have a female separated category or if you separate the categories, as long as it's coming from the woman and like you said, Scratchy, you talk to your women and the women in your scene are like, this is what we want right now, then great. The whole goal is that we are empowering the women in our scene to have the power of their voice and step up for what they believe in, to be able to share their message, share authentically when something upsets them, share authentically when men in the scene are being toxic. If we can create a space like that, then I think we will get to the point where things can be mixed. But I think at the heart of this whole conversation is very, very risky to even call it male and female, because now we're secluding an even more oppressed group potentially in our community, right? Where now people who are not trans or, non-binary, now we're creating a space for them where they don't even feel comfortable. They see how the women are being treated and that the women don't even have their say in this community. How, am I going to have a say? Am I going to do this? This is conversations that we've had with people in our community where they see what happens with the men and the women, and now they feel like if they talk about what's going on with them, how are they going to get their voice in, or where do they? This adds a whole new layer to the whole gender equality, and gender equality is just equality in general. How do we make more people in our community, whether it's your race, your religion, color of your skin, how much money you have, like Harry said, the elitism, the people who are really popular to the people who are just like a hobbyist, the professional beatboxers to this. How do we create a space that everyone can come in and feel like they're being accepted and like they have a say to create the world around them that they want?
Mm-hmm. Can I ask Kaila a very, very quick question, just to help everyone listening, which is, if you were to very quickly, what is a checklist to that in your opinion as a female organizer, that would make it okay for the questions you'd ask a female beatboxer, which makes it okay, like the checklist to have a segregated battle, so a female only battle?
Well, first I would have the conversation with them. It also depends on the country. If I'm having this conversation with my females, we're essentially creating a new category. We're not obliterating, right? So I will speak on behalf of people in other communities who are, the issue is about putting them together instead of separating that, because I think that's the larger issue. So I would talk to the women in your scene, regardless if they come up to you. Ask them first, what is your experience as a female beatboxer? Originally, from the bat, say, hey, my goal in this conversation, I want to be an ally, I want to support you, and I want to make sure that this community allows you to have a space to do what you would like to do, for you to succeed ultimately, right? So I would first just ask them, how is this experience for you? I would ask them, are you facing obstacles or judgments? Do you feel that you're facing obstacles or judgments because specifically you're a woman in the scene? Let's talk about those and let's find actionable steps to switch those. I would ask them, do we want to have a national, do we want to put together, let's say, do we want to have outside events other than the national events that are female only battles? Would you feel comfortable if we had multiple events throughout the year where you battled men to get to for us to mix the national battles? Do you want national battles? And if the women are, I don't know if I'm not that good yet, blah, 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 I think the role of the man then is to give them the confidence, because there is not a difference between a female and a male beatboxer, right? At least for me, when I was coming into the scene, everyone said, girls are good, but they can't go fast. And then I learned technicality, and they were like, oh, well, you learn technicality, but they can't learn throat bass. And then I learned throat bass, and they're like, cool that you have throat bass, but lip rolls is something that girls can't do. And then I learned the lip roll. So it always seems like there's one more thing that we're trying to catch girls on. Like, oh, that's cool. Oh, inward bass. And then you look at Radelaide from Australia, or you look at Chihuahua, or these people, women doing this, right? So I think if you're a man as well, ask them, make sure that the intention is clear, that this conversation is to support you. Creating a space where they can talk about other obstacles, not just what they want, and just listening, like you said, Harry. Finding out if having outside battles where they battled men before the national category could help, right? If you're in an area like the UK where it's pretty small and I feel like people can get to each other easier than we can in Canada and the United States, where Sparx and I are. And then ultimately following through with the decision that the women make. If the women in your country are asking you that they want to have a mixed category, then don't try to convince them out of it. Well, oh, I don't know if you're really going to be able to. Are you sure? If this person won last year, do you think you can make it in? Respect that that's the decision that they would like, and support them in the way that they can get there. Yeah, I think for me, one thing that I'm going to start, starting in June, I want to have free Zoom workshops for any woman in the scene. You guys can come on. We'll do it once a month where all the women in the scene can come for free and learn for myself. I know Bella said that she would love to teach. Sparx, I would love to have you in the room. Reeps, I would love to have you in the room teaching these women. Like, let's give these women more spaces that they can feel confident enough to hit the stage, and if they choose to, then they can have the mixed category and battle other men and women and anybody in between.
Thank you. I'm getting a voice in my head that we have just a couple of minutes left on this panel, and so if anybody had anything that they wanted to add or that they felt was not said today, now is the time.
I want to talk about that same question. Okay, it's finished. It's fine.
No.
No. By all means.
Yeah, it's your go.
All right, cool. Sick. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, like, I've like my personal experience with the sort of gender divide battle stuff has been like there's never been like there's often been more than one thing true at the same time. For example, so I came third in the UK Championships in 2007 against boys. It wasn't segregated at that point. And then in 2000, and that was very satisfying. One of the first battles I competed in was just like a random one in Brighton, and like I won, and that was insanely satisfying, and I felt like that was pushing me forward. And then at the World Championships, obviously it was separate. And like I all those women wouldn't have been competing if there wasn't a separate battle, because no woman had won their national championship. So in one sense, I'm very grateful that that category was there and that I was able to go and that I was able to meet all those women that otherwise wouldn't be there. But at the same time, even though I just won a world championship title, it was just like, which is kind of mad to say. And like, I don't go around saying that, but I do feel like there was a deflation around having won the female championships. And that's not to disrespect the category, but also it's like what Kaila was saying about an A category and a B category. And the most like biggest gratification that I've had as a beatboxer in the battle scene was when Grace Savage and I, as Bird, won the team category in the UK Championships, which was again not mixed, because there was no question. It was nothing about girls. It was really very much about girls because the whole conversation cannot be escaped. But that was what gave me the most gratification and potentially was the reason why we worked so hard to get there and to like level up to that degree. But one of the things that I think is so important in everything anyway is community. And I think that as women coming together as a community, and women and gender minorities coming together as a community, it's a real answer in moving forward. And in London, the Roundhouse have given us a space basically to bring, like, for women and gender minority beatboxers to come together and train together. And basically, yeah, it's sick. And basically the general vibe from these people is like, we want to get in the mixed battle and we want this space that's just for us, but we want to get in the mixed battle and we want to train for that, but having the separate space, like the grassroots space. And this is the words from Shamim, who's a beatboxer, and she said, yeah, it's really important to have this grassroots community space, but then for us to be able to go and like try to go in for the mixed battle. So that's what's sort of being said at the moment over here in the UK, where the scene there's been such a drought of female beatboxers in the community. And just from having this space that we've started, it's just started to, like, it's been since January, it's been transforming like that. Like, it feels totally different just from having this space. So and also, by the way, I was inspired by Scratchy's moves in France to make this happen as well. So big up Scratchy.
Thank you, Belle. I think that's amazing what you're working on over there. And I'm excited to see the work that you guys do, how that progresses. And with Kaila and Scratchy and Reeps, all of you guys, I hope that we keep this conversation open. I could talk all night about this. Like,
oh my God, innit?
I can't believe how time just flew by like that. I didn't even get to half the questions I had, but that very, very fulfilling conversation. Thank you, guys, and please keep it open. And for me, I also want to say that men have this conversation amongst men. It doesn't have to just be led by a woman or non-binary people. It really can start with you guys just hanging out and starting to chat about it. And I think that's really important. And thank you again, BoxCon, for giving us this platform to chat about this today. I really hope that we can continue this conversation. And if you guys who've spoken, Scratchy, Bellatrix, if you wanted to drop in the Twitch chat maybe links or anything that people who've listened today can go to see how they can connect with their local communities. Perhaps there's some women from the UK or from France listening right now. Feel free to drop that in the Twitch chat. And again, thank you all so much for participating, for offering all that amazing insight. I hope everyone at home took a lot from it. And I think a big takeaway from today was have an open heart, have open ears, listen, and make action after that. Listen first, then action. I can't speak at this point. And thanks again to Scott. So well. And again to BoxCon. I think that's it. I got the man in my ears was speaking a minute ago, and then Okay, yeah, he's back. Okay. But thank you guys again so much for joining this conversation, and let's keep it going.